I want to spend a few minutes talking about co-creation and co-creation of policy. What does it actually mean and what might it look like? But first, a clarification. Co-creation is not the same thing as consultation. So what's the difference? Well, the best way that I think of to draw the distinction is that consultation fundamentally is a one-way process, whereas co-creation is more of a two-way shared relationship of analysis and decision-making. Co-creation begins when we start to share control over processes of analysis, decisions, and delivery design. It requires a different way of thinking about our positioning in the systems of problem analysis and solution development and decision-making. So we become less the tip of the funnel through which everything flows as public servants, and we become more the enablers, the liberators, and the peers in dialogue to shape a collective effort towards solutions. Let me give a few examples. I recently learned about the Laboratorio para la Ciudad, the laboratory for the city in Mexico City. They have done some amazing things, which I think are perfect examples of a co-creative approach. Their lab's most astounding and ambitious example has been their project to crowdsource the Constitution for Mexico City. They worked with Change.org, mobilized all kinds of in-person and technological means for engagement, and had 500,000 people involved in the development of the city's new constitution as a collective, creative process and project, not a passive consultation. That included a large contingent of the city's youth who were not even yet of voting age, but they were engaged expressly to build a vision for the city that reflected the perspectives of its children and youth, because they knew that 5 million residents, nearly 1/4 of the city, are under the age of 15. Another example, a bit closer to home, I'll flag the growing explorations in participatory budgeting pilot initiatives in cities across Canada. So cities like Toronto, Guelph, Vancouver, and Victoria have been experimenting with participatory budgeting models now, some for many years. What's participatory budgeting? It's a democratic process in which community members directly decide how to spend part of the public budget. And it's more than a referendum on spending priorities. A key aspect of what makes it co-creative is the process of discussion and deliberation that involves citizens and community groups in discovering needs and opportunities even before proposals are defined and voted by the public. So far my examples have focused on the city context. What about the federal context? I think we also have some exciting examples emerging, and many of you will know of others, but let me talk about a couple examples from my world. So our department here at ESDC, we've been experimenting with hackathons and civic tech approaches, tools that let us bring people together around specific problems to dive deep into the issues and have teams with diverse expertise working on solutions together. The solutions often involve new ways of deploying data or new ways of deploying technology as part of the opportunity to forge new responses. Now, all of my examples so far have been about opening processes broadly, but there are also ways to apply co-creation techniques in a smaller, more closed circle environment. And sometimes that's actually what's needed. We have applied the technique in some interdepartmental work, for instance, getting groups from across departments to consider issues around inclusive growth from a shared perspective that cuts across mandates, and then co-designing and prioritizing solution spaces together. And we've done community-based workshops with partners where we share the responsibility in setting the agendas, analyzing findings, and driving the outcomes toward joint interests, also together. Now, these might seem like small examples, but I want people to realize that you don't need to have a revolutionary lab like the one in Mexico City to be applying these principles in the way we do our jobs every day. So there are some key conditions to consider if you're trying to advance a co-creative approach. First thing to know, you are not off the hook. Co-creation does not mean we step back and do nothing and let others figure it all out. Co-creation actually demands a lot of us as public servants in terms of what we bring to the table to facilitate the collective process. And even in the Mexico City example, with its focus so radically on openness, there were experts involved in the first stages to lay the groundwork for the constitutional discussions. And we are often those experts, we in the public service. And we also play an important role in the information and data that we make available so that our collaborators can be properly equipped to engage meaningfully. And the other thing I would say is not every issue lends itself well to a co-creation approach. You need to know how much scope you have to open things up and let others be in the driver's seat. Now I know, and you also need to know what you have to lose. It's easy for us to contemplate all of the risks of relinquishing some control, but I often find that one of the best arguments for pushing boundaries in this space is to prompt a reflection on what happens if people don't feel that they've been part of the solutions. And finally, my last tip, don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. This is something I have to remind myself all the time as well. Even small steps into more co-creative processes can be a great thing and help propel us forward.